And go. They must hear that. You landing on the roof like that.
Steel. Stone. Concrete for miles. I wonder if there's anything in this world worth saving. Desolation. Tyranny. Enemy of endless might. I'm wondering if I have any friends left standing. Comes down to it, and I'll fight alone. But I promise you this. Friends, if this is where they're keeping you, I will find you and set you free. Bad things below. Safer to move across the rooftop undetected. Stay off the ground.
Well, it's safer, but is it more fun? So, this prison at red level. So, about this idea of this kind of endless, invincible fascist state, if we think back to the Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire, so the early part, there was one of rapid expansion. In fact, even under the Roman Republic, there was rapid expansion. And then it transitioned into an empire. And then the expansion stopped. I think mostly for transport reasons, because like the further you get from the capital, the more difficult it is to transport messages and soldiers and all that to the frontier, right? And so the Roman Empire had a certain size, and it couldn't really grow. It couldn't practically grow much more than that. And in this scenario, if we say that those transport problems don't exist for the Third Reich, then alright. So let us hypothetically say that the Third Reich conquers the whole world, and the entire Earth is under the rule of the Third Reich. So what happens to a militaristic state when it has no more enemies to fight? So the Romans, it wasn't that they had no more enemies to fight, but they couldn't expand any further, right? For the Third Reich, let's say they conquer the whole world and there's no more enemies to fight. What happens then? Because you invest so much of your resources into your military, because your military then goes and conquer other people to take their stuff, and that's how you make a profit, right? That's how you gain anything, is from conquering. And so when you run out of things to conquer, what do people do? And I bring up the Roman Empire because what happened was that people started to scheme against each other. And so occasionally there'll be civil wars. and like, you know, people would fight for the position of emperor. And because there were so many legions, and because there were so many soldiers, these civil wars would be serious business. Like there would be serious wars, and so Rome became its own enemy. You know, when you run out of enemies, like when your whole civilization is based on destroying enemies, but the enemies have all been destroyed, then what happens is that you start to turn on each other to fight for power amongst yourselves. And you know, like Caesar and Brutus, for example, was it Caesar and Brutus? And no, it was Caesar, Brutus, Octavian, and who else was? I'm sorry, I'm showing my ignorance here. But if you look at Roman history, and then there'll be other times, there were other civil wars too. In Augustus's time, like when Augustus first became emperor, there were 3 emperors or something. They decided to kind of have 3 people rule the empire, and then there was another civil war before Augustus united the empire again. And so every time there was like a transition of power, it was quite often the case that there would be some sort of civil war. And occasionally the Praetorians would rebel, or they would kind of manipulate politics to their advantage. The Praetorians being the elite soldiers that guarded Rome. So the soldiers that guarded Rome were the most elite ones, and they were the most well-funded and also the strongest. But because they had so much power, that they would themselves manipulate the politics of Rome to their own advantage. Um, so when you have this military state, but then you run out of things to conquer, the military starts to turn in on itself. And if you look at the United States today, you might say a similar thing. Like, the United States has clearly the most well-funded military in the entire world. And that trickles down because like the extra military hardware that the military don't need, they sell to the police departments. which is kind of ridiculous because you see American police with this desert camouflage gear, because that's a surplus gear from the Iraq War, right? So they go invade Iraq, and then they come back with this extra equipment, or they have extra equipment, and what do they do with it? So they sell it to the police departments. So the police departments are running around with these M15s, M4s, AR-15s, M15s, M4s. So they're walking around with these M4s and desert camouflage and like military armor, which is the strangest thing when you are the police. When you are doing police work in the United States, but you wear desert camouflage, isn't that the weirdest thing? But it's because they're supplied with military hardware, with surplus military hardware, and so the American police force is over militarized into a ridiculous degree, and they just have all these guns and weapons and Humvees and armored vehicles and whatnot. And it's like, what are you doing with that stuff? and what do they do? I mean, if they have them, they use them, and so every time they deploy them, they look like an occupying army inside their own country. And again, even though, I mean, black people being shot by police aside, even if it weren't for that, it is still the case that this over militarization eventually comes back to be used on your own people. Just like, even if they don't mean it, like even if they're not being nasty about it, it is still the case that if you have excess military hardware being sold to the police force, then eventually that hardware is going to be deployed against your own civilians in your own country because your police has them. And so again, no matter how it happens, whether it's Roman emperors fighting for power and having civil wars, or American police being completely over militarized and over equipped with military weapons, or in this case, this fictional Third Reich, you would expect that these soldiers, having no one else to conquer, they would eventually start fighting each other, or they would somehow turn that power on themselves. And so, and I guess the Soviet Union might be a similar thing, although it's not quite the same thing. But the Soviet Union too was also kind of over-militarized because of the Cold War. And even after the Second World War ended, Stalin continued to oppress people and crack down against political opponents, and he murdered a lot of people. And so even though ostensibly they were communists and they were against the fascists, and they defeated the fascists in the Second World War, but then after the war ended, Stalin still purged people and killed their own people. So this thing, like if you rule using violence, that violence, having no enemies left, will be turned towards your own people inevitably. That's my observation based on my understanding of history and of current events. And if you read about your history, you will see this too. Like every militaristic state, when they win, that's when the trouble starts. I mean, of course, if they lose, then they lose. But even if they win, their military just having nothing else to do will be turned against themselves. Anyway, that's my rant. Not sure why that's all that relevant here. I guess what is relevant here is because this game portrays this world where these Nazis have so much power and so much equipment and all these robots and so many weapons, and you have to think that at some point they're gonna turn on each other in their own power struggles. Like whenever they have a disagreement amongst themselves, they would turn on each other in a civil war, and that would not be a surprising thing to see happen. Anyway, I haven't played the game before, so maybe it happens later on in the game. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Should I... Do you think there's loot up here? Do you think if I mess around up here on the roofs, I'll find loot? I mean, there's a glowing thing in there, in that room. I don't know if that's relevant to me. I mean, there's a soldier there, there's a gate down there. I don't know how, if any of this is relevant. What if I go down there and start killing people? It seems like a... I suspect we'll be doing it later. It just seems weird if we just bypass all this interesting stuff and we are not asked to ever deal with this stuff. Look at all this stuff. How interesting is that? Alright, here we are. So cool. Hey, look at that. So cool. Such architecture. Wow. Isn't this cool? Alright, what do I do now? Let me just wander around a little more. See what kind of shenanigans I can get into. Not much this side, apparently. Probably the other side. Unless I can, like, climb up here. No, this is actually an invisible wall. Can't go that way. Oh, there's a guy. Hi, guy. What's up, guy? What's up, guy? Prison guard melee. Alright, so these guys don't even have guns. That helmet looks uncomfortable, to be honest. What's that? What's that? Oh, this is a... Oh. Alright. We can cut that. We stand up. Alright, cut that. Power it back up. What is this? Oh, that's dog food.
Gefangene, vergessen Sie nicht, dass Sie bei jeglichem Widerstand gegen Umerziehungsmaßnahmen der umfassenden Gewalt des Strafvollzugs ausgesetzt werden.
The full force your legal authority permits. Explosive boxes. I mean, it says explosive. I don't know if I trust it. It's not. Wait, hold on. That says explosive. It's not explosive. What? Come on, game. Come on, game. What is this? It's not explosive.
Gefangene, vergessen Sie nicht Ihre Pflichten im Strafvollzug. Sie befinden sich hier als Folge Ihres Handelns. Leisten Sie Ihre Strafe mit Würde ab.
Your sentence with dignity. Your obligation to the penal system. Ah, yeah, sure. I'm sure that's real convincing, dude. Remember why you're here. So, what is it? Oh, there's a turret there. Hold on, let me just avoid the turret. Let me just cut through this.
Gefangene, vergessen Sie nicht, dass der Besitz verbotener Waren automatisch
Possession of contraband results in a mandatory extension of your sentence. What if I sneak into the prison? Do I get a sentence if I do that? And get owned. So how do I deal with those? How do I deal with those? Do I avoid them? Do I? That's a pretty long drop there. What the? No. No. No, we didn't see anything.
Gefangene, denken Sie an Ihre Angehörigen. Lassen Sie sie nicht im Stich.
Remember your loved ones, do not let them down. Oh, that's... I guess we should just find a way to turn them off, right? The game says I should go over there. Let me... No, dude, what? Crap. Alright, let's go. And get stabbed! And get stabbed, get stabbed. I mean... mostly correct. That was mostly right. So, there's another guy down up there. Hold on, let me just... Can I get around him? Look how interesting, look how vertical this is. Ah, nuts. What the? No, stab him. Stabbing doesn't seem to work very well on slopes. The execute doesn't seem to work very well on slopes. Or stairs. Alright, so where are we going now? We are... Oh, look at that guy. Yeah, I see you. Can't quite kill you yet. There's a thing there. What is... I don't know what that is. Alright, the game wants me to go that way. This way. Oh, like, so to my earlier point about the military. The first Han Emperor in China, Han being one of the earliest dynasties. So when they were, you know, fighting the civil war, or fighting the rebellion against the Qin dynasty. Anyway, politics aside, so like when they were fighting the rebellion, a scholar, it was... What's that? It was said that a scholar approached the Han general and told him about, you know, like he said, like, talked about the government and talked about how you need etiquette and protocols and laws, and okay, that's not good. I'm running. Ah, crap. Ah, good enough. Good enough. No, down. Oh, this. We're not out yet, are we? So protocols and laws and customs and stuff like that. And it was said that the Han general at the time took the scholar's hat off his head and pissed in it. And then all the other soldiers laughed at him. The scholar, that is, laughed at the scholar. And this was during the rebellion, and the general or the leader of the rebellion said, you know, we don't have time for your protocol and your laws. and that sort of nonsense. Like, we're in the middle of a rebellion. We need soldiers, not scholars. And sent him away, right? But then, after the rebellion was won, it was said that the leader, now the new emperor, invited the scholar back and told the scholar, okay, now this is your turn. Now that we have defeated the previous emperor, now is the time for you to help me set up this government. So, you know, a few years ago he pissed in his hat, and then a few years later he took him and made him a high-ranking official in his new government. And so that is another way to say that, you know, you need the military to conquer the world, or in this case, you need soldiers to conquer China. But I just went in a circle, didn't I? But having conquered China, after you conquer China, then you need the scholars, and you need the lawyers, and the ministers, and the people who aren't soldiers to help you govern the country. So that's another way of saying that, you know, if once you're done conquering, you need to like de-emphasize your military and actually get on with running the country. Or else, if you're done conquering but you still invest overly in your military, then you end up like the United States. Delicious. Where your police wear the desert camouflage, which is odd, and you know, kind of, it's not correct if you think about it.